Nonetheless, but to welcome our studio guest, Jackie Shandu, political commentator, and Sfiso Mahlangu is ANN7 and TNA special editor. Your position, he was appointed just the other day. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
So you're editor-in-chief.
I left you of this panel.
All right, but welcome, gentlemen. Just for clarity, it wasn't expected to be smooth sailing, as it were, different ideologies, and especially in how to implement certain policies for service delivery.
Sure.
But in this case, if a budget does meet the poor or pro-poor agenda of the EFF, is it expected? How could it be expected of the councillors to vote against a budget that agrees with what their mandate is? I'll start with you, Sfiso.
Well, I think it's interesting what is developing in this country's political diaphragm. The reality of the matter is ideological marriages are always a challenge, because you take a vast thinking, economic base, a very classist approach, when you apply a very Lenin and Marxist analysis of what political parties represent. People still vote on color lines, people still vote on margins of need. If I need a house and I believe in radical economic transformation, for instance, I believe that the RDP model can grant me a house. If I believe in the NDP, I'll be more likely to vote for a party, a political party, that is promising housing, perhaps, and free education. If I am astute or I believe I've made it, as the term goes in South Africa, I'll think to vote for a political party that believes more in building bicycle lanes than housing for the poor. And so we are still very vast in our thinking, and our votership is very, very different. So when you have an ideological marriage, a coalition, even though the EFF had formally declared that it is not in a coalition government with the DA, they are only flirting. They are in a coalition because they ran these municipalities together. But when the crux, when the chickens come home to roost, you find that these parties are different. Their methods of application are different. Their thinkings are different. And the masses that elect them are different. So it was never going to work. I think what is tumultuous for me is the fact that the EFF expects something in Parliament that it cannot accept for itself in Mohale City. And perhaps there's there's murky water, as you said, to what the EFF believes in these days. I think if the EFF wanted to structure itself as a party for black people in this country, they needed not run a municipality, they needed to speak for radical economic transformation and speak for land. That is a debate that could have won them votes in this country. But I think going into the same bed as the DA lost some points to them, to which other organizations such as the BLF seem to be taken over from where the EFF seems to have failed.
Okay, Jackie Shandu, just your perspective as well, in that the splinter party from the ANC, which then became the EFF,
right,
is not a homogenous group necessarily of individuals that sing the same hymn. They're also not immune to the challenges that the great church of the ANC is facing. In your view, how then do you handle before expulsion or even taking a hardened stance of disciplining members that voted on their conscience on really a budget that makes sense for the service delivery to the poor?
Sure. I think that the first thing to consider would be the founding policies of the EFF, and to then measure that against the budget, the proposed budget in whatever municipality. It seems to me that if principle is to be followed, that should be the determining factor, that this budget is pro-poor. It speaks to the issues that are right at the top of our priorities, which speak to education, to land, and so on and so forth. But the reality is, this has nothing to do even with ideological differences. If we go back to early August last year, just after the local government elections, the utterances of the leadership of the EFF were clear that the decisions they had taken in terms of where their vote goes as a political party had more to do with punishing the ANC and less to do with the reality on the ground and what are the priorities of black people and so on and so forth. So maybe even cracking our heads for something that's neither here nor there. It is simple that these are very punitive measures that come what may, even if at a local level the ANC seems to have it right, or at least better than the DA. We will still stick to what is our mandate to punish the ANC at whatever cost, which then raises questions about whether the most important constituency and the most important priority, as far as the EFF is concerned, are the poorest of the poor, as it claims. If, when there's a situation where it has to choose between punishing an opponent or prioritizing the poor, it chooses.
All right, Jackie, let's get a view from Lifuno, who is the National Chairperson for Citizen Action Campaign. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. Our caller Bongani is saying that, in essence, the enemy has been clearly defined here as the ANC, and our panelists concur that the EFF, rather, is devoid of principles in this matter in Mogale City. What is your view?
Yeah, good evening to your viewers there. Let's first start by admitting that the EFF has become very confused because Julius has just said days ago that he has been misled all along, so he's trying to mislead his followers and so on. When you look at the situation in Mogale City, personally, I've worked with some of those councillors there, like Eric Baloy, very principled leaders there. And then we can understand that it is their conscience that make them to take the conscious decision to stand with the poor. Know that the EFF, Julius, because of the relationship he's got with the DA, that they cannot by any means vote with the ANC. But here we're talking about the poor people of Mogale. If you go to Bekasdal and you see the dire conditions in which the people live under, you can understand that when the EFF councillors collected the demands of the people, making sure that they're included in the budget. So in the back of their minds was to say, at least yes, then it's an opportunity to make sure that we determine the lives of our people. But I know that Julius is not going to rest until he sees them out because of the decisions he has taken together with the DA. So he has to punish them. But that is going to cause the EFF come 29 local elections in Mogale.
All right, please stay on the line with us. We have Tandi on the line. Good evening and thanks for joining us. What's your question or comment?
My comment, I just want to say to the panel there on the TV, the EFF...
Salukumi TV, we can hear you in the background.
The EFF, switch the TV off, please. The EFF has got a right to... it's got a right because it's their policy. It's the EFF's policy. We have to go about the policies of the EFF. Each and every house is got its own structure. So those councillors of Mogale City, they have taken the constitution of the EFF to them, while the EFF gives them bread to their
all right, Ma'am Tandi, thank you so much. I appreciate it. If that is the policy and we say you must toe the party line, you're not there on your own steam or your own wind, you need to toe the party line. Is that the principle, even if it's against your own conscience?
Well, like I said earlier, it depends on the priorities and the order of the priorities of the organization. Look, we cannot run away from the fact that 20 years into democracy, there had been an element of complacency, if not arrogance, on the part of the ruling party. Now, with the emergence of the EFF, it was hoped that this would definitely send shivers down their spines in terms of we have to regroup, we have to find ourselves again and go back to our people and deliver to them. And I think to a certain extent, symbolically, the mere formation and the excitement around the formation of the EFF. So I don't think that beyond that, and I think this was also the outlook of the EFF initially. The ANC is going to catch a wake-up call, and we will force them to, and will force them to deliver. going to white liberals, right-wingers like the Democratic Alliance cannot translate into a better life for black people.
All right, let's hear what David has to say. We'll come to you in a moment. So good evening to you, David. Thanks for calling. And what's your question or comment?
Good evening. Thanks for taking my call. I want to also highlight on the issue of the priority. Seemingly, political games are at hand here. We in the political scenario must have issues of national interest. Like if you check when USA or Britain was attacking countries like Iraq, you would find Democrats and conservatives having a certain goal, a project of national interest. This it comes home whereby the EFF should consider the interest of the masses on the ground should be a priority rather than playing political games, because here it shows the greed and what quality of a political party they are. For them, it's more of games than service delivery.
All right, thanks so much, David. We really appreciate your call. I'm afraid we're out of time. Calling us from Davidton. Benetton and Mpumalanga, you'll be our last caller on this debate. Good evening to you.
Good evening, ma'am.
What's your question or comment?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to comment that the people, it is important for us as the people to start educating ourselves about politics, because people are trying to gain ground in order to position themselves politically rather than to service us as the people. So it is important for us to start learning, to be able to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong.
All right, Bernard, we're going to leave it on your pearls of wisdom in that it is for us to decipher as voters ultimately who will champion the cause of the greater majority of this country. To our panelists, thanks indeed. I'm afraid we're out of time.
It's not me that took your time away.
And thanks to you at home for watching as well. Siso Mahlangu is political editor for TNA and ANN7. And we had Jackie Shandu, political commentator. And we also had the chairperson of the Citizen Action Campaign joining us on the line. To you at home, much appreciated for taking the trouble. We're back after this.